Hello and good afternoon. This is Kenya Rockman, author and founder of the Child Support Hustle. I hope everyone is doing good this afternoon. Happy Saturday. I'm doing well. Thank you very much. I'm sure if we were face to face, you would ask me, so I'm doing well. Thank you. Um, as the title suggests, um, child support warrants or owing child support is becoming a death sentence, or not even becoming. It has been a death sentence for a lot of people, a lot of parents for a long time now. And I've been extremely vocal in my protest against the use of debtor prisons and the need for abolition in all cases, especially when it comes to child support cases, for a number of reasons, mainly because people should not be jailed when they cannot afford to pay a debt. That's child support debt, student loan debt, medical bills, anything. If you can't afford to pay, you're too poor to pay, you should not be incarcerated. And it's not just how I feel about it, it's across the board in most states, in most jurisdictions, that's written. I mean, that's the law. So I've written a bill and I've lobbied legislators here in Texas a few years ago. Currently, there are 7 states that do not have legislation on the books prohibiting imprisonment for owing debt. These states are Delaware, Louisiana, Maine, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, New York, and West Virginia. I've included a document in the description that I created, and it has the information for what jurisdictions, states have, what their law is, or what's on the books as far as debtor prisons, what they have on, what the law is, where you can find it if you ever should find yourself incarcerated or facing incarceration for a debt. And that has what the prison, what the incarceration sentences are for child support debt too. That's in the description. So every other jurisdiction has something on the books that strictly outlaws jailing someone who is too poor to pay a bill or a debt. So that begs the question, why are low income and poor parents being jailed for owing child support debt that they cannot afford to pay? And more importantly, why are lawmakers allowing these violations to continue to happen? Clearly, it's about money, and it's not the money they receive from parents who obviously have no money. That's been established. These parents cannot afford to pay. Otherwise, they wouldn't be behind on payments and they would be able to purchase their freedom before they would even be locked up. If the judge is saying, okay, if you pay $500 today and you can get up out of here, most people are going to pay versus going to jail. That's just a given. So if they're already behind, putting them in jail is just, it doesn't make any sense. And most people, excuse me, already know that. It's counterproductive. So they would pay to purchase their freedom versus going to prison. Um, and that's not even how the child support system or how the contempt of court process is supposed to work in the first place. For example, so this is more than just this, locking people up for debt is bigger than just the child support system. It's, they get money for locking people up, period. So for example, in 2021, the Kentucky Supreme Court ruled that jails couldn't charge fees to inmates when they are not convicted of any crimes, even though they have been incarcerated for a very long time, for a long period of time. This ruling was handed down when a man sued after being incarcerated for 14 months. According to John Cheves, that's Cheves, of the Lexington Herald leader. I think that's Ledger. I think I have a typo. The Clark County Detention Center violated the law by charging a man $4,008 after all charges against him were dropped and he was set free. The county and other counties argue that they have the right to charge people for room and board and anything else they want to charge, all while knowing that they cannot afford to pay. Again, if you can't find out, why would you then charge people when you know they can't pay? You just want them indebted to the government so that you can come again and then lock them up. And that should be just as illegal as locking people up because they are unable to pay the original debt that they are arrested for in the first place. In that same article, the author reveals that the Clark County Jail's financial records show that the jail billed inmates over $107,000 for booking and housing fees. They charge people for arresting them. But they only collected a little over $12,000 at the time that these records were reviewed. So they charged $107,000 and only collected $12,374. And that sounds just like child support when they have this large, the child support debt or arrears that are owed per year is so much higher than the actual current support owed because of interest and these fees and everything like that. So just and then when they try to collect it, it's way more than what a parent can pay. So you have this debt here, which we see here is $107,000. I mean, over $107,000. But when they collected it, it's not even $13,000. It's not a drop in the bucket. And that's why you hear people say, oh, child support arrears is $113 billion or something crazy. But then you look at how much current child support is owed. It's nowhere near that number. Because again, it's smoke and mirrors. They took a fake debt and added to it late fees, interest, and all this. And then you have poor people being charged this debt. First of all, this debt that is fake. And then they added all this money to it, interest and all this stuff. So then you have low income people charged a debt they can't afford to pay. And when they do pay, the debt just never goes away because they can't afford to pay it. So it just keeps, and now mind you, the late fees and everything just keep adding up because they never can pay the balance in full. So it's more than just locking child support debtors up. It goes to, because this guy wasn't, the guy that sued them, he wasn't locked up for child support. He was on another charge, but he was found innocent. But they still charged him for room and board. But you see how the state or how the government uses this to collect revenue. So the collection amount should be no surprise because they are charging people who can't afford to bond out, like people who can't afford to pay child support purge amounts, just like the late Mr. Leslie Starnes. And this is Mr. Leslie Starnes, that's Starnes. Mr. Starnes was arrested in, I think I'm pronouncing this correctly, Bullitt County, Kentucky. That's Bullitt. He was booked in Louisville Metro Corrections on January 26th of this year. He had been jailed for 4 days when on that Sunday morning, according to jail officials, Mr. Starnes died after attempting to hang himself in his jail cell. According to Drew Gardner of WLKY, Mr. Starnes was arrested on a warrant out of Bullitt County for not paying child support and was being held on a $5,000 bond. The ACLU of Kentucky has gotten involved and is calling for an end to the cash bail system, but not specifically because of Mr. Starnes' death and him being jailed due to lack of money, but because that particular jail has reported 5 other deaths prior to Mr. Starnes dying due to his attempted suicide. So it's not even about Mr. Starnes being there because he couldn't afford the $5,000 bond, and that's illegal. But because this jail has had so many deaths before him. But nobody, that's so this is the big issue here. In order for the ACLU to even say anything, not only do 6 people have to die in this jail, they're on the cash bond system. They have a problem with the cash bond system, the cash bail system. Okay, I agree with that. But even a bigger issue is that they're not supposed to be jailing people who can't afford the debt on child support cases anyway. Why is that not being mentioned at all, anywhere? So there's a political analyst for the Kentucky ACLU, and I'm going to have to spell the last name because I cannot pronounce it. But the first name is Kungu, Kungu, last name Njugnua. And of course, the description, the links to all this is in the description. Said, quote, clearly the individual who was there for non-support was having issues making payments, and to set a $5,000 bond is ridiculous, in my opinion. That should not be an opinion. Oh, end quote. I'm sorry. That should not be an opinion. That's facts. It's not ridiculous. It's illegal. And I'm sorry. And to say that clearly it's ridiculous that organizations that have so much power seem to be unaware that Mr. Starnes being jailed for non-support for an amount that he could not afford to pay was illegal in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. So it's not ridiculous, and it's not an opinion. It's not ridiculous. It's illegal. And for a political analyst for an organization such as the ACLU, anybody should know that. And we need to discuss this. Mr. Starnes should not have been even locked up for that. So on the books or on the Bill of Rights, and this is according to Kentucky, the Kentucky Bill of Rights, Section 17, it states that excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel punishment inflicted. Section 18 says that imprisonment for debt is restricted. Why is that? Why are they doing cash for bail in that state? Or when we see it here now, there's other jurisdictions that have this on their constitution or on their books. I say on their books, but when I say that, I mean on their constitution or in their laws or in their legislation. But if they have it there written, why does it still take place? These arrests should not happen. But that's not the only problem. The article goes on to discuss a University of Louisville law professor who, according to Gardner, says making the law about having the option to impose other conditions for release, including home incarcerations or regular incarcerations, could be tough on judges. And I'm like, what? Tough on judges? And I'm like, why? If they're breaking the law by sending people to jail, then why? Who cares if it's tough on judges? And this is how the professor, his name is Sam Markinson, Marcosson. He says, quote, if they release someone and that person commits another crime, especially a violent crime, they end up criticized for being soft on crime or not doing their job to keep the community safe, end quote. One, this is not a violent crime. Being locked up because you owe child support is not, first of all, it's not a crime. If you cannot afford to pay, if you're not willfully failing to pay child support, you're not committing a crime at all. That's first of all. They have to show that you willfully violated a court order. Oh, thank you, 24. Oh, don't forget to subscribe and like the video. Thank you. Thanks for the reminder. You have to willfully fail, have the means. You have a court order against you, and you have the means to abide by that court order, and you do not. That means that you broke the law according to this court order. If you have a court order to pay child support and you don't have the money, that means that you didn't willfully fail to pay or break the law as far as violating that court order. So you didn't commit a crime. So to say that the person could commit another crime if the judge let them out of jail is bullshit. Then to say that it's going to make the judge look soft, no, make the judge look like the judge is following what the judge is supposed to do. The judge is making sure that they're not locking up poor people for being poor. Who cares if people think they're not doing their job or they're soft on crime, because that's not a crime. Mr. Starnes should not have been locked up, especially if he wasn't afforded his right to due process, which I can almost guarantee you that he wasn't. I can almost guarantee you. At this point, I'm willing to bet like serious cash. And in cases like this, I mean, and to me, serious cash like $500, $1,000, I'm willing to bet money like that. That in cases like this, when people go to jail for contempt of court and things like this happen, they're not getting their right to due process. They are not granted that right. So since 2011 and before that, the child support guidelines have been very specific that a person has to have the ability to pay and refuse to pay in order to be in violation of the court order and therefore in contempt. And don't take my word for it. If you are in your state, just look up the child support guidelines to be like a contempt of court violation. Look it up and see what it says. It's going to say willfully failure to pay. That word willfully is going to be there. In anywhere you live, it's going to have to say willfully. And if it doesn't, I want y'all to screenshot and send it to me. cshustle1@gmail.com is there. So I say 2011 because the guideline was emphasized more emphatically because that was the year that the United States Supreme Court ruled in the Turner versus Rogers case and set specific ground rules on when a child support case should be referred for contempt of court. And I've written about Turner versus Rogers. I've done videos about Turner versus Rogers. I've spoke about Turner versus Rogers because it was a landmark case as far as child support and contempt of court is concerned. Like, it changed the whole game as far as people getting locked up for child support. And almost every state has ignored it. There's information pertaining to the right to counsel in the decision as well. And I discussed that in another video because just recently an appeals court in Colorado remanded a contempt of court case back to the trial judge because There was a violation of due process rights because they held a father in contempt of court and they weren't supposed to. And they cited this Turner case, the Supreme Court case. And that was one of the first times I had seen this case cited and a case remanded back because his due process rights were violated. So I did a video, and that's in the description as well. So it's been a long time, and like I said, this was already on the books from the beginning, but the child support system or machine, however you want to refer to it, has been used to operating the way it wants to, and nobody has said anything for so long. They just railroaded whoever they wanted. There's no accountability. They just operate how they want. And so everybody was getting their license suspended with no notification. They were getting cases, those default judgments, using sewer service. Men were being named legal fathers. There was paternity fraud. For the past 30 years, this has been going on. And so now, because of the internet and because I'm gonna say people like me, advocates that start writing and exposing the system, they whatever's done in the dark comes out in the light. So now they've been exposed, so they can't keep moving around the way they had been moving around. So they have to fix some stuff. So with that appeals case in Colorado, and there's another case that just the same thing. They just remanded another case back to the trial judge because they violated due process in another state. So I'm gonna do a video about that. I just haven't had a chance to research it and see all the specifics, but I'll put that up too. So according to the Office of Child Support Enforcement, this is about Turner and what your rights are if they're going to hold you in contempt. This is what they have to do. Oh, let me get some water. Excuse me. So the SCOTUS made it clear in Turner that a non-custodial parent's ability to pay constitutes the critical question in quotation marks, in a civil contempt case, whether the state provides legal counsel or alternate procedures designed to protect the indigent obligor's constitutional rights. Before filing a civil contempt action that could result in the non-custodial parent being sent to jail, states must ensure that the child support agency has screened the case to determine whether the facts support the finding that the non-custodial parent has the actual and present ability to pay or to comply with the support order. That says it right there. If somebody's locked up and the agency didn't do that, that person's right to due process has been violated. And if that happened to me, after I got out of jail, I would sue the whole damn city. I'll sue the whole country, really. I'll file a lawsuit against everybody. That's a due process right. But y'all did not check to see if I had the actual and present ability to pay, especially during COVID. People are unemployed. People can't work. The whole country, the whole world shut down at one point. So people were not working and they were still locking people up. If you went to jail, if they put a warrant out for you and you went to jail during, especially after COVID hit, I'll file a lawsuit against wherever you went to jail and against the United States. Allegedly. I don't want, stuff happens when you say too much, but your right to due process has been violated if that happened to you. Finally, prior to going to court, the state must give clear notice to the non-custodial parent that his or her ability to pay constitutes the critical question in the civil contempt action. Keep in mind that these rules were issued in 2011. Every jurisdiction has had more than enough time to implement safeguards and any necessary changes to their guidelines to prevent anyone and everyone from being illegally and unconstitutionally incarcerated. 2011, I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff that done happened since then. So really nobody, Mr. Let me make sure I get his name right. Mr. Starnes should not have died in jail over a child support debt, over $5,000, if he didn't have the money to pay it. If his family is, or if y'all know his family, or please, if they happen to hear this, please sue that entire Commonwealth of Kentucky. Your loved one should still be alive, not dead in jail from their negligence. And yet in 2022, another parent has died in jail because he couldn't afford to pay a child support debt. And the country is silent except for a couple of local media outlets. And again, they're talking more about this is about Mr. Starnes being the sixth death in that jail, but not about him being in jail for child support. A representative from the ACLU and a college law professor have offered statements, but say nothing about the U.S. Supreme Court ruling, due process violations, or the Kentucky Bill of Rights, stating that imprisonment for debt is restricted. What's the use of having laws if not one person in charge follows them? We elect these people. These people are, we vote them in, and they're not doing anything. What's the use of having these laws if there's no accountability? I've included links to other news articles of other parents who have died owing child support debt or were incarcerated on their way to jail because of owing child support debt. This father was the latest person to die in jail, but this is a pattern. This has been going on since I've been advocating, and I've been advocating for 8 years. So this has been going on for a long time, since they start punishing parents, since they start criminalizing parenthood. I think most of us can agree that it is usually a sad occasion when someone dies. It becomes sadder when someone dies alone. But it's a real tearjerker, in my opinion, when someone dies in jail, away from their family, over being poor. The haves and the have-nots is a real problem in this country, and there doesn't seem to be any relief or resolve for the have-nots in sight. What is the use of having a SCOTUS ruling in cases if the people voted or appointed to uphold the laws of the land simply ignore the orders? Make no mistake, more people will die in this exact manner until opposers of this draconian and barbaric system that routinely practices unconstitutional measures are held accountable. The people who routinely violate the Turner ruling should lose their positions, and when their violations result in the loss of life, they should face incarceration. They're directly responsible for everybody that has died, that has went to jail and died or died. The people that should have been following these guidelines, they are directly responsible. For every one of the people who have died in jail who cannot afford to pay the regular child support or arrears, and they were sentenced anyway, the caseworker who referred the case to the court for contempt, the judge who sentenced them, they should all be fired. If any deaths occurred after the Turner case in 2011 and before, the SCOTUS ruling, they should all face criminal charges. I want to say rest in peace to all the people that have died as a result to the unconstitutional use of debtor prisons and collecting child support debt. And my sincere condolences go to the families of all the victims and especially the children. I want to thank you for watching, and don't forget to click the subscribe button and the like button. And right now I'm gonna go to the comments because I see some over there, the chat, I'm sorry, and see what I see. Some hides. What I hope y'all don't have no violent stuff going on over there in the chat, because that's no bueno. Yeah, child support sucks. I don't want to say that this time. Last time I said child support sucks, they shut me off. Shut me down. Okay, let me go to the... Oh, thank you, Sola Scripture. I appreciate you being here if you're still on here. Domestic terrorism. Well, I have to say, I'm not gonna talk about that, but I'm not gonna talk about that. System sucks my time. Yes, even if your time is over, definitely teach people, especially these young folks, before they have children. If they already have children, it's great to educate them about what they may be getting into, about what they're about to get into. I put out a couple memes this past week, investigate before you impregnate. I'm laughing, but it's so serious. It's so serious, the ideal thing, if you're going old school or biblical, get married before you have children, but not everybody's into that. Not everybody wants to get married. So before you have children with somebody, go to their house, go to their mama's house, the grandmother's house, the brother's house, the sister's house, the everybody. If they got family out of town, go there. Go to a family reunion if you can. Go meet everybody, because when you have a baby with somebody, you're there for pretty much y'all gonna be connected your whole life. Investigate before you impregnate. And ladies, if you want to hear, I don't forget the ladies when I talk, but like I always say, the child support system was designed as a welfare recovery program, but fathers are the ones that are mostly negatively affected by the system. I mean, that's just factually true. That's what it is. So I don't forget about my moms on child support, or my mom's mothers on child support, but the majority of parents that pay child support, that are arrested for child support and all that stuff, are fathers. So it's not that I don't. Even in the links, there were 2 mothers that died while incarcerated for child support. Much love to you too, Grove Street Hustler. That's right. We need a curriculum. I think it needs to be taught. Just like I've said this several times: reading, writing, arithmetic, and a child support hustle. I appreciate you for being here, John C. Yeah, it just has to be taught, because it's part of life. It affects child support affects your credit, your professional license, your everything. Whether you can buy a house, whether you can your paycheck. You have to learn about proof of service. If you're getting sued for child support, there's so much. Do you sign a birth certificate? I did a video about that. They changed that whole thing. So many dads, or not dads, reach out to me. Well, I didn't sign the birth certificate. How am I on child support? They changed that where you don't have to sign the child support. Sign the child support. You don't have to sign the birth certificate to be a legal father. So, but they don't teach that in school. They don't tell these young people that. Oh wow, get promoted at work. Yeah, child support will affect your job. And one thing, when they have like contracts overseas and people want to go overseas to work and stuff like that, you can't get your passport to go and work overseas. Entertainers, when they want to go and perform overseas, like rappers and stuff like that, they can't go overseas because their passport is seized. Like it stops your child support will stop your life. So yeah, it's that important. Everybody needs to, and for the mothers, the young mothers, and I talk about this too. Like you don't have to put him on child support. Um, y'all can work it out. Try to work it out amongst yourselves because that the government is going to take some of your money. So many people get, like, if your income tax is seized, the father's income tax is seized for $2,000, let's say, and the mother gets $100. Well, where's the rest of the money? Well, the government took it. But if these two aren't talking, it looks like he only paid $100, so it looks like he's not taking care of his child. And he thinks, well, the mother got all 2,000 because they're not communicating with each other. The government just came up on what, $1,900. So it's a lot, they man. So yeah. Right. But that's like with anything, in my opinion. If you don't go through it, if it's not directly involving you, if it doesn't directly affect you, then most people don't. People don't care. Oh, that's okay, John. All you want. Just like with homelessness or something like that. If people like, oh, well, they shouldn't be in front of my building, or they need to move on. Homeless people this and homeless people that. Well, shit, if you've never been homeless, then you might not understand how difficult and how tragic it is to be homeless. Until your ass is homeless, then you know that shit is hard. So just like child support, if you've never had 70% of your income garnished and you're supposed to pay your rent with the rest of that money, then until that happens to you, then you act like you don't care. But never say never. Maybe if you 70 and you don't have kids, yeah, you probably will never be on child support. But a lot of stuff, never say never. Okay, guys. I am about to get out of here. I'm traveling tomorrow, so I got to run and get a couple things for my little trip. But I wanted to do this live before I traveled. If you need to get in touch with me, I'm not on social media anymore. I had to shut it down. Y'all know when y'all first go on Facebook, I know I did, and that's all you do is stay on Facebook. That's why I was just there on them social media platforms. So I had to check out. So if you want to support the cause, I just give out information now because I like to share the information that I know when I find out new stuff, John. If you want to share, like, I have a petition out to erase all government owed child support debt. You can share that with your friends and family. Hopefully they'll sign and share. That is all found in my link tree, and that link is in the description. If you want to donate, send a gift. My Cash App is in the description. I'm not on Twitter anymore. I shut that account down. I'm not on Instagram anymore either. If you have a question for me, you can thank you for sharing